In this video, we'll be continuing with the human excretory system. And we know that the human excretory system consists of a pair of kidneys, a pair of ureters, a urinary bladder, and a urethra. So if we have a glance at this diagram over here, we see that we have a pair of kidneys, a pair of ureters leading to the urinary bladder, and finally a urethra. Before we get into the details, first let's get some basics clear. So kidneys are reddish brown bean-shaped structures as we can see in the diagram, and they are located between the levels of the last thoracic and the third lumbar vertebrae, that is the T12 and the L3 discs of the vertebral column. So if we want to get an idea about where the kidneys lie, so let's consider this is the last thoracic vertebra, and here is the third lumbar vertebra, and in between the rest of the vertebra lie. Also, it is said that the kidneys are close to the dorsal inner wall of the abdominal cavity. Now, of course, we'll look at the diagram, but just to get an idea that what is the dorsal inner wall of the abdominal cavity. Let's consider that this is a person standing sideways, and this is the abdominal cavity. So we are viewing this abdominal cavity from the side. This is the front and this is the ventral side of the abdominal cavity, whereas this is the dorsal side of the abdominal cavity. And in this abdominal cavity, we know that the stomach and the intestine as well as various other organs reside. So here the kidney lies according to this statement. So this is the dorsal side as well as the inner wall of the dorsal side of the abdominal cavity. So there the kidney lies. Now let's focus on the dimensions of the kidney. So the kidney is said to be around 10 to 12 centimeters in length, around 5 to 7 centimeters in width, and the thickness of the kidney is said to be somewhere around 2 to 3 centimeters. Also, one kidney weighs around 170 grams. Now let's focus on this diagram over here. We have a pair of bean-shaped kidneys, obviously, and above the kidney, here we have the adrenal gland or the suprarenal gland. We'll discuss more about this in the chapter Chemical Control and Coordination. So, apart from this, we see these two tubule-like structures, which is this blue one is the inferior vena cava and this red one is the dorsal aorta. Dorsal aorta branches into the renal artery, and we see that these inferior vena cava as well as the renal artery, they both enter through this concave notch-like structure. Now, if we look closely at the bean-shaped structure of the kidney, we see that this is a concave structure through which the ureter, the renal artery, and the inferior vena cava, they all enter into the kidney. And this structure is known as hilum. Since it allows the entry of ureter, blood vessels, as well as the nerves It is of utmost importance. Now, this kidney gives us the longitudinal sectional view. So here we can see the cortex, the medulla, the pelvis. We'll be looking at these structures in detail further. So let's move further. So as I said that hilum is a notch towards the center of the inner concave surface of the kidney, and through which the ureter, blood vessel as well as the nerves enter. Now we have a specialized structure present in between the kidney, which is the pelvis or the renal pelvis. So the renal pelvis is basically a broad funnel shaped space which has projections known as calyces or singular calyx. So more clearly that can be understood with the help of this diagram. Let's focus on this diagram where we have a detailed view of the kidney. So the kidney is lined with a hard capsule known as the renal capsule. This is the outer layer of the kidney and it is tough. So it provides structural support as well as protection. Now inside the capsule, the kidney is divided into two zones. So what are these two zones? Cortex and medulla. The cortex is the outer side of the kidney and the medulla is the inner side of the kidney. So this is the cortex, all this is the cortex, and this portion is medulla. And in the medulla, we have further divisions in the form of medullary pyramid. So the medulla is further divided into medullary pyramids. So medullary pyramids are nothing but these conical masses, and they have projections known as calyces. These are the projections which are known as calyces. Also the cortex extends in between these medullary pyramids and forms a column-like structure known as the columns of Bertini. So these are nothing but the extension of the cortex between the medullary pyramids, and they are also known as the renal columns. Now coming to the functional unit of the kidney, which is the nephron. Now I am focusing on the term functional unit and not structural unit. Nephrons are the functional unit of the kidney. These are basically the complex tubular structure contained within each kidney, and each of these nephron has two parts. The first one being the glomerulus and the second one being the renal tubule. Also, the nephrons are around 1 million in each kidney, accounting to a total of 2 million in both the kidneys. Now let's focus on the two parts of this nephron, that is the glomerulus and the renal tubule. Coming to the glomerulus. What is the glomerulus? So glomerulus is a tuft of capillaries formed by the afferent arteriole. Now there is a lot of terminology here. So what is a tuft? So a tuft is basically an accumulation of capillaries at one place. So here in this figure, it is shown that these are the blood capillaries and they are accumulated at one place. and therefore this is a tuft. Now what is this afferent arteriole? So afferent arteriole is nothing but a fine branch of the renal artery. Remember the renal artery which entered the kidney through hilum. So the blood from the glomerulus is carried away by efferent arterioles. So we have to keep in mind that the afferent arterioles bring the blood towards kidney, whereas the efferent arteriole, they carry away the blood from the kidney. Efferent means away and afferent means towards. So this has to be kept in mind. So this was the first part of the nephron. Now coming to the second part of the nephron, that is the renal tubule. So the renal tubule begins with a double-walled cup-like structure. This is a double-walled cup-like structure called the Bowman's capsule. So Bowman's capsule looks something like this. This is a double-walled structure. And the glomerulus, this glomerulus or this tuft-like structure is contained within the Bowman's capsule. It is like this. This is the Bowman's capsule enclosing the tuft or the glomerulus. So one thing that has to be kept in mind is that the glomerulus plus the Bowman's capsule together forms the Malpighian body or the renal corpuscle. These renal tubules further continue to form a very highly coiled network known as the proximal convoluted tubule or the PCT. And further, this PCT continues into Henle's loop, which is a hairpin shaped tube. Now, the Henle's loop consists of two parts. The first one being the descending limb and the second one being the ascending limb. So we are just getting an idea about the structure of the nephron. Many of the collecting duct converge and open into the renal pelvis, and from renal pelvis they go to the medullary pyramids, and from the medullary pyramids they go into the calyces. The Malpighian corpuscle, PCT and DCT of the nephron all are situated in the cortical region of the kidney. We know where the cortex lies. So in the cortical region of the kidney, the Malpighian corpuscle, the PCT and the DCT of the nephron are situated. Whereas the loop of Henle dips into the medullary region. So on the basis of whether the loop of Henle is extending into the medullary region or not, the nephrons can be classified into two categories, that is the cortical nephrons and the juxtamedullary nephrons. So the cortical nephrons are those that have a short Henle's loop which do not dip into the medullary region of the kidney, and majority of the nephrons are cortical nephrons only. Now, what are juxtamedullary nephrons? So, the nephrons with a very long Henle's loop and they extend deep into the medullary region of the kidney. And the number of these juxtamedullary nephrons are relatively less in comparison to the cortical nephrons. Right now, we are just focusing on the terminologies and we'll look into the diagram in the upcoming sessions. So now there is a specialized structure known as the vasa recta. Remember, the efferent arteriole emerging from the glomerulus forms a very fine capillary network around the renal tubule. And this network of the renal tubule is known as the peritubular capillaries. What are these vasa rectas exactly? So they are a minute vessel of this network and they run parallelly to the Henle's loop, and they also form a U-shaped structure called the vasa recta. And one characteristic feature of the cortical nephrons is that the vasa recta is absent or highly reduced in the cortical nephrons. So we'll be discussing about these structures in detail in the upcoming sessions. Thank you for watching.